Okay, it looks like it's pretty much 6:30, so we'll get this meeting, I'll call this meeting to order and ask that the roll be called, please.
Weibel. Bergson. Harper. Heiser. Petrie. Schrader.
Here.
Esri.
Here, and just make a quick comment. Welcome, Matt, to the ELEC committee. Move on then to approval of agenda and addenda. Is there such a motion? So moved by Petrie, seconded by Weibel. Any discussion, changes? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Thank you, that passes. Move on, approval of minutes for the ELEC committee meeting, June 9th, 2016. Moved to approve by Petrie, seconded by Harper. And please note that Ms. Bergson's entered the room. Any comments, questions, corrections on the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Thank you, that passes. We'll now move on to public participation. Thank you all for coming. I will make a note that we have a standing rule of 60 minutes for public participation and ask that each person take a maximum of 5 minutes to speak. Mr. Schrader here is going to run his stopwatch on his phone, and you want to give him a bit of a warning, or just?
I'll hold one finger up when you got a minute.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, John. And I'm gonna just in the order that they were received, they got piled on top of each other, so I'm gonna start at the bottom of the pile, and I'll call your name. And I also would ask if you come forward for the record, if you would please state your name and where you live. First up, looks like we have Dennis McInnes. And then, sir, please, being the first one, the bottom button right in the middle and you're on and good to go, and you can feel free to pull a little bit
Thank you.
closer
I'm Dennis McInnes, 312 Yankee Ridge Lane, unincorporated Urbana. I'm here to speak against the proposed open burning ordinances. As a libertarian, I'm generally philosophically opposed to such intrusions on personal freedom, but as a resident in unincorporated Urbana who will be impacted by one of the options, I'm particularly concerned. It seems to me that this is a solution in search of a problem. If we look at the complaints that were logged in Attachment D, of those complaints, most of them involved activities that are already illegal. Only 2 so far this year involving burning of landscape waste by resident. Only 2 last year, and it's hard to tell in the previous year since they aren't broken out. But it seems that this is not a burning issue, if you will, that this solution is overreaching. In Urbana in particular, there is no low-cost or no-cost alternative to burning. The only alternative is to bundle the sticks and the branches that fall from the trees, to bag the leaves, and to pay for their removal. Mulching is not always a possibility given the large volume of leaves, and certainly branches that fall from oak trees cannot be easily mulched and disposed of. So it seems that this is a heavy-handed way of handling the situation with respect to Urbana residents and possibly with respect to the Champaign residents as well. I have looked at some similar ordinances in other counties around the state, and so far as I can tell, there are none that ban leaf burning completely or land waste burning completely by residents. They ban it in part. They ban it certain times of the year. They ban it certain hours of the day. But virtually all that I've seen permit waste burning by individuals on their own property, given certain setback requirements, given certain requirements involving low wind, And they allow it during certain weeks of the year, certain days of the week, or during certain hours of the day. Seems to me that this would be a much more reasonable approach that would satisfy those who complain about smoke. They would be forewarned as to when this might be avoided and how to avoid it. So again, I appreciate your time, and I respectfully am opposed to these options.
Thank you. Next up, Ronald McGuffin. McGaffin, sorry.
My name is Ronald McGuffin. I live in Edgewood Estates in Urbana, and we're outside of city limits. We're in a well-established neighborhood. We have trees all over, and they're big trees, and they're nice trees. And I burn. I'm not necessarily saying burning is a good thing, but unless you can offer me an alternative to get rid of my leaves, where it's not going to cost me a fortune to get rid of, I don't see where it would be fair for me not to burn. I do know there are people in my neighborhood that has asthma and doesn't breathe well. My mother, she had emphysema. I know how that works. But if I was to haul mine off, it would take 20 truckloads just to haul them off at my own expense. And I can burn right in my fire pit in my back of my house. So I don't really think it's fair unless you, as a board, can establish some way for me to either freely or maybe minimal expense get rid of my leaves. If you can do that, I'm happy with that. I don't need to burn, but until you can do that, I don't think you should be able to tell me that I can't. That's probably about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Kylene Gilbert.
Hello. First of all, I'd just like to thank you for addressing this issue this evening. My name is Kylene Gilbert. I live in the city of Champaign at 1508 Coral Cove Drive. My family and I live in a Champaign neighborhood that's full of families and children. We live 2 blocks away from the city limits, and where the city limits end, people are allowed to burn their yard waste and leaves. This unincorporated area is a block away from Morrissey Park and mere feet over the invisible city limit line. Although it's considered unincorporated, the neighborhood is indistinguishable from other areas of Champaign and Urbana. The lots are small, city-sized lots, and the homes are close together. Yet because this area is technically unincorporated, there are no yard waste or leaf burning restrictions in place, and residents there burn their yard waste regularly. This burning occurs the most frequently in the fall, but it also happens in the spring and the summer. Our family has lived in our current home for 9 years, and this burning has always been a nuisance. Smoke knows no boundary lines, so the smoke from the unincorporated neighborhood next to us fills our yard as well as our home if windows are left open. There are times when this smoke can visibly be seen in our yard and in the surrounding yards when people burn. It is unpleasant to breathe, along with being unhealthy. My immediate neighbors and I speak of this issue each year, commenting on how awful the smoke is. But what we have been told after contacting the city of Champaign or the fire department has essentially been that that area is allowed to burn since they're unincorporated, so there's nothing that they can do to help us. This has been very discouraging. It's difficult to feel that you have no voice and no recourse in a situation that negatively affects your life. And to speak to one of the comments that was made about low numbers, my personal view is that since when you do call, you're pretty much told that there's nothing that can be done, most people probably either give up at that point or, and so they don't complain again. So I would assume that those numbers are extremely low compared to people that truly are impacted by this. While the smoke from leaf burning has always been a nuisance, this issue became more serious for me personally. In November of 2013, my then 2-year-old son went into respiratory failure, due at least in part to the leaf-burning smoke coming from this unincorporated area. We had our home windows open and the smoke entered our home. My son, whom we know has asthma, ended up in the Carl ICU in a medically induced coma on a respirator for 11 days. He was in very serious condition and he nearly lost his life. He spent a total of 21 days in the hospital. Thankfully, he did recover and is now under the care of the pediatric pulmonologist at Carl, who told us that when people are burning leaves, we must immediately bring our son indoors and make sure all doors and windows are closed tightly so that the smoke does not get in. Our pulmonologist told us that smoke is one of the leading triggers for people with asthma or other respiratory problems, and it is especially dangerous for children and for the elderly. I have spoken with several residents of that unincorporated area who burn and have explained the situation, asking that they bag their leaves instead of burn them. Some people are truly sympathetic, but others say that while they are sorry, they are legally allowed to burn their leaves, and so that is what they will continue to do. I have heard a number of excuses from those who wish to burn, starting with the cost is too high for me to pay for my leaves to be removed. When I hear that, I'd like to ask, is the cost of bagging your leaves truly higher than the cost of my son's health and the health and well-being of others around you? One resident in the area that burns told me, it's just so much easier for me to rake my leaves into a pile and to throw a match on them. In fact, I personally bagged that woman's leaves after she told me that she wouldn't bag them, but that I could do it if I wanted to. And since she is a frequent leaf burner and has many large trees on her property, I did end up raking and bagging those for a season. As you may already know, the township does provide for leaf service for that particular area in Champaign at a low cost to the residents. And they can also take their bagged leaves to the township yard for free. I'm speaking tonight and sharing our situation in the hopes that the Champaign County Board will help us. Please stop leaf burning in areas adjacent to the unincorporated areas. Am I out of time? Am I okay? Sorry. Those of us living near these types of unincorporated areas of Champaign County have absolutely no protection from the pervasive, unhealthy, and in my son's case, life-threatening smoke from these burning leaves. Before I close, I have a handout for the board of dates and times that burning has taken place near my home. It's not a complete log. I began it at the end of August in 2014, I believe. But hopefully it will give you some idea of the frequency of the burning in our area. And again, it's only my own personal observation, so I'm sure there may be more of other people. This is just when I was able to observe the smoke or when it affected us. And I also have some photos for your consideration as well. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. And yeah, they can
If I can hand these.
give them to Tammy there and we can get them passed out, I'm sure. Thank you. Next up, Stephen Platt.
Good afternoon. My name is Steve Platt. I live at 310 Pond Ridge Lane in Yankee Ridge subdivision, unincorporated Urbana. I might as well throw out all my notes because the first speaker in particular, but also the second speaker, covered many of the same points that I intended to make. However, since I have 5 minutes, I might as well take a couple here and add just a few more comments. With regard to the numbers presented in the information packet associated with the proposed ordinance, maybe they are low. My comments are consistent with the first speakers in that my immediate reaction was they were low, and that I thought that the approach for the regulation, the new ordinance, was unnecessary based on those numbers. Those are the numbers that we have to go with. If those are the data that are being presented, those are the responses that I think we have to respond to, and you have to listen to. Perhaps one could start logging all of the folks who call in and start developing a more extensive database to determine whether or not these data are in fact accurate or not. Skipping over the other points that have already been made, I want to make just a comment or two about what I think is the inequity about the proposed ordinance, in the sense that not only is the proposed ordinance going to be applied to a subset of the county residents, it also treats, as the first speaker mentioned, the residents of Champaign Township and Urbana Township differently by imposing a de facto tax on the residents of Urbana Township because we do not have access to the same facilities as Champaign Township residents have for disposing of landscape waste. I also wonder about the unintended consequences. So suppose this ordinance gets passed and the restricted burn area is established. So some folks, such as myself, might find ourselves in that restricted burn area. We could no longer burn, but I could step outside the backyard of one of my neighbors into an area that's no longer considered a restricted burn area. And that individual or individuals are able to burn. So what's to stop me or some subset of folks to now come back to the board and say, I don't like this? What's the board going to do? Are they going to entertain these complaints, new complaints? If not, why not? Because the precedent has been established that a few complaints can get the board to enact regulations and restrictions that affect a much larger number of individuals. Another example, suppose this ordinance gets passed. What's going to happen if and when later this year somebody or a small group of folks decide they complain about wood-burning fireplaces? And they want the board to do something to ban burning wood in your fireplace. How is the board going to handle that? And so the question is, where do things stop? Where do you draw the line? So I have concerns about the heavy-handedness of this. I have concerns about the inequity, about who is going to be subjected to this ordinance, and the differential treatment of folks in the two townships in particular that may result from this proposal being adopted. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Carrie May.
Hi, I'm Carrie May, and I'm actually neighbors with Kylie Gilbert. She did such an amazing job talking about all the problems we have in our neighborhood. I would like to say ditto. And actually, comedy relief is usually my method of communication, but in this instance, it's not, we live in this neighborhood and it's not funny. It's not funny that we have to have all these restrictions on our kids because people 2 blocks away are allowed to burn. My son and I exercise, we run together, we walk together. We can't go out just a block past our neighborhood without in the fall coming across all this smoke. I don't think it's fair that he should have to say, Mom, are those storm clouds, when it's smoke that's just inhabiting our area. It's difficult to breathe for not only Kylie's son Luke, but my daughter has reactive airway disease, so she's very easily affected by smoke. She gets colds, and then we have to start on breathing treatments. All of these things because people don't want to pay a couple extra dollars to have their leaves removed. I don't see how that is fair to taxpayers. When we bought our house, we didn't know that we were going to be 2 blocks away from an area that could burn leaves. That's not mentioned in your closing. That's not mentioned when a house goes up for sale. So I'd like for this to go into effect. I think it's being fair and safe for the children and families in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Keith Paget.
Good evening. My name's Keith Paget. I live at 1 Lyndhurst Place in Champaign, Windsor Park subdivision. I am also the Highway Commissioner for Champaign Township, located at 3900 Kearns, Champaign. If I like to have all my information gathered up, I visited with a longtime worker for Champaign Township. By the way, that picture is a picture of our commercial burn pit that was put in 2002, and then the other picture is when I had it rehabbed in 2013. But he was telling me back in the 80s and 90s, when they'd find debris out on the rural township roads, they'd burn it right there. I don't think that's a very good idea when you got a corn crop going there, maybe catch a whole cornfield on fire. So in 2002, that burn pit was put in. Like say in 2013, I had it rehabbed to same situation, 30 horsepower electric air curtain on top of it. It's like a cutting torch. The more air you put to it, the less smoke there is. Once it gets going, it burns. Champaign Township is 6 miles by 6 miles from First Street over here close to Urbana to Barker Road to the west, almost out to Bonneville. From Old Church Road in Savoy to Cardinal Road to the north. Everything that's not incorporated into the city of Champaign, the city of Champaign comes long and hard and takes acreage and makes it a town. So somehow or another you get encapsulated by the town. The subdivisions that I serve, which are 7 subdivisions that have a leaf limb pickup program, they have 1 in the spring, 2 in the fall, which tries to keep the residents from burning items in the street. I like not to have them burned in the street, but there's some guys that just like to do that. So I don't mind if they burn it up in their backyard or up on their driveway, but they still like to burn them a bit. Now, when I bring those in there, have them in one consolidated place and burn them professionally, I think that's probably the way to do that. But if you're gonna shut me off too, and I've heard conversation of that, then I'm not picking up these subdivisions, so all the residents are gonna have issues with all their debris that comes from their yard, their limbs, their leaves. We don't take grass. We did start a program where a person comes in, they sign a register, let us know who they are, what subdivision they come from. With the emerald ash borer, with all the trees that have had to come down, we're required to burn those professionally. They didn't want the firewood going everywhere, but then the emerald ash borer got out of hand and it got everywhere. But we're still having a lot of ash trees come in that we burn there on the lot. The thing is, in one of my subdivisions, I got a call from a lady that said I was referred to her by the sheriff's department. She paid some men to clean up her lot. They did. They hauled it 2 houses down and put it in the driveway and told her that was their uncle's house and they was gonna burn it in the backyard. When the homeowner of that resident found out it's a vacant house, he said, those aren't my nephews. So then the township, out of goodness heart, we went up and cleaned it up. I sent 3 guys, a backhoe and 2 dump trucks to clean that up because that's kind of, an unusual situation. If these people are not gonna be able to burn, if I'm not gonna pick it up, what are they gonna do with all these ancient trees that are coming around more and more every day that a storm, simple trimming to keep them looking nice, or a lot of times it's a visibility deal where they're coming out onto the road that the bush has grown out too far. So there's debris out there. And if we shut that off, then I'm gonna have more debris out on the rural roads, which is a considerable issue. We probably have 10 incidents a month. It's usually on a Monday after someone's cleaned up on the weekend that, it's just, they might pay them $40 to clean up the lot. So, well, I have to have another $40 to take it over to Urbana to the landscape recycling center, and then to put that in their pocket and they take it out on the road and dump it on me. And every township has that issue. I just came from Highway Commission meeting in Peoria, and we are going to approach the legislators to put forth a bill to double the fine of people when we catch them out there. We don't catch them very often, but every once in a while we do. And when we do, the word will get out that they're pretty serious about it. Maybe I shouldn't dump it out on the rural road. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Joshua Johnson.
Good evening. My name is Josh Johnson. I live at 2302 Finney Drive. It's near the corner of Windsor and Mattis. And thankfully, the Champaign Town Service offers us yard waste pickup. It's $10, and they offer it 3 times a year, in addition to allowing us to drop off the yard waste whenever we want. I would just like to thank Keith for offering us this service. I volunteer my time to pass out the flyers and to collect the fees for this, and it's a very low price of $10. Unfortunately, in my particular subdivision, The service isn't utilized. There's a few people that do, but most people choose to burn. And unfortunately, the burning happens at whenever it's convenient, so it's never at the same time. I'm pretty much guaranteed not to get clean air on the weekends. There are only so many weekends to enjoy the nice weather that we have, and without having rules in place, everyone just kind of burns as they see fit. I'm totally in support of these measures. In our particular case, we have a great service that's offered to us, and we just need to have more people utilize it. And for the people who are against these measures, nobody is trying to ban fire. We're just trying to have clean air that we can enjoy on the weekends. So that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sandra Klitzing? Klitzing? Okay, sorry.
I'm used to it by now. My name's Sandra Klitzing. I live at 2407 Morrissey Park Drive in Champaign. That's just off Windsor by Sunsinger, across from Morrissey Park, so in between Prospect and Mattis. So I suspect some of these folks are kind of in my neighborhood as well. Thanks for the opportunity to take this feedback from all of us so that you can know what we're thinking. Someone near me burns on a regular basis, particularly leaves, but sometimes it really smells like trash or other things. It's really quite nasty. I have asthma, so I have, when there's burning, it's difficult for me to be outside during that. Sometimes even it will come inside. At great expense to us, we've put in a filtration system in the house, so at least during high burning periods, I can have good air to breathe. I reported this, talking about the numbers being low. I reported it, talked to the Champaign Police, talked to the Champaign Fire Department, and I was told it was an unincorporated area, so there was nothing that could be done. So I'm not one that has come to you, recently, because I've been told nothing could be done. So when I saw in the paper that it was being discussed, I thought, well, maybe something can be done now. So I would encourage you to seriously consider the ban, but to also be fair to people who might have financial difficulty, but still, people need to breathe, and that's critical. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Rob Schaefer.
Good evening. My name is Rob Schaefer, 4101 Kirby, Champaign. I currently live outside the city limits of Champaign and enjoy burning on several occasions just to clear downed limbs and whatnot. Now, while I'm not unsympathetic to the people with medical issues, I believe the rule as it's written now is too broad in scope and doesn't address the actual issue, which is air quality. Forgive me, I'm out of breath. I had to run the building a minute ago. Air quality being the primary concern to people with medical issues, the opacity standard, which is present in most states' EPA rules, and it allows for ignition time for burn pits to establish the fire. But after that, as long as the fire is well developed, the smoke isn't as bad of an issue. Now, this doesn't apply to a smoldering pile of leaves or wet grass, which I believe is the majority of the problem. Perhaps if the law was more narrowly construed to address the issues such as heavy smoke pattern or unintended fire, or if you're within 200 to 300 feet of a residence with issues. I mean, my yard in particular, I'm 700 feet from the nearest city resident, and everything around me is open space, and I only burn when the weather conditions are proper, and I've allowed the fire pit to dry out. So, you know, smoke really isn't an issue. And if the wind was blowing towards my neighbor's house, I'd be courteous enough not to burn that day. I mean, some of this stuff is common sense. I know you hate to hear that, but I just believe that the law is written too broad in its scope and should be addressed to actually fix the problem and not just inhibit people from burning when they need to. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Ken Jones.
Thank you. My name is Ken Jones, and I live in Urbana Township. And I grew up with asthma when I was young, and so I grew up with it. I outgrew it, and so I understand the concerns and understand where this may be coming from. But I live in Urbana Township right now. I am still allowed to burn. I don't even burn leaves anymore. I went to mulching years ago, and before you pass something like a ban, I hope you give more consideration to what's our alternatives. Because right now, I called Urbana Township. I said, okay, if you're going to ban me from burning, and I don't burn very often, I try to make sure the wind's blowing the correct direction and to keep from annoying one neighbor that I know would not appreciate it. So I try to watch out for things like that. But the Urbana Township wasn't able to give me an answer like, where can I take my stuff for no cost or a little cost? I mean, I've taken a pickup load to Urbana Recycling before, and it always seems to be a whole lot more than I want to pay. So before you pass something like this, give us some kind of alternative. Where can we take it? You know, it's not going to cost anything. You know, I have no problem with that. I'd like to be able to I end up taking care of several yards in my neighborhood, and I'd like to be able to take the yard waste somewhere instead of just, you know, I could take it somewhere. I have a pickup truck. I'll take it. But I'm a little guy. Where do I take it? Urbana Township, my township, can't help me. So can the county help me? Can I take it to a county recycling center that's not going to cost me something? That's my issue, is give me something where I can take it somewhere. That's really, I hope you consider that more, as much as you're considering everything else. I think it's, you know, worth that consideration. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Bill Fisher.
I live at 1608 Sandpiper Court, which is on Lake Devonshire. I live relatively near the ladies that spoke earlier, and I am concerned about all people with, of course, health issues, but also I've spoken to several neighbors, and they've spoken to others about the quality of life with the smoke that comes from south of us, and it's several blocks. It's not just 700 feet. I'm not putting the gentleman down. I think he did an excellent job. But I do think that for the sake of the community and the health of all people of all ages, that quality of life is a major issue also. Oftentimes when the weather's nice in the fall, we keep our windows closed and don't go out on our patios or around the lake because smoke is prevalent in the air. And we're not permitted to burn, which I don't mind. I used to live in Mahomet, had large trees. Unfortunately, now as I look back, I did burn for a lot of years, but I'm thankful that I live in Champaign. I'm fortunate I do have a truck. I can take it, but the city pickups are wonderful. I am concerned for those that live in Urbana Township, what they will do and can do with their leaves and limbs. But I do think this is an important issue, and hopefully the board will be able to find a solution for everybody. But I would appreciate the banning of the burning. Thank you.
Thank you. Kathy Eastman.
Good evening. I too would like to add my appreciation for your having this subject matter come up for board consideration. I would like to add live in Cunningham Township, about a block east of Crystal Lake Pool. And I live right on the border between the city limits of Urbana and Champaign County. Right across my street is county, I'm city. There's an area of just a few blocks. It's kind of a no man's land, if you will. It's county surrounded by Urbana Country Club, the Anita Purvis Nature Center and the park, and a little bit of housing there between that area and Cunningham. And we've had a number of issues where I have a family member who has allergies, and with the smoke issue, with people burning at irregular intervals, crossing the street, oftentimes there is trash or cardboard thrown into the smoldering leaves. And I live in a house that's over 100 years old, and it's impossible to keep the smoke out of the house. I'm also very sympathetic to people who want to burn, need to burn, and are looking for a cost-effective measure of removing their leaves. And I think it is a helpful thing for the board to also consider alternatives as they are considering the burning issue. So I guess I'm asking for two things this evening. One is, since Cunningham Township is not in the areas that was considered for as your two proposals, I'm asking, if not begging, for you to consider the larger area around the two cities, to consider the 1,000-foot space between city limits and county, because there are a number of areas that, like mine, that fall into that issue where you essentially have one neighbor across the street that can burn at any time, and you as a city member cannot. It's only fair that we look at other areas that have the same problem and not only the ones that are mentioned in your two proposals. But also, I understand that there are problems for people who cannot always burn and who have issues with leaves and tree debris, and trying to find places where we had more options to take things to burn in a safe place where it is removed enough from residential areas that it would not create a problem. I think it is part of our being good citizens to one another to consider this if possible. I'm willing to, at this point, to pay my hauler $2 a leaf bag to take away my stuff that I can't get during the free pickup time that Urbana has. But it's not always an option for everyone, so I'm hoping that in the things that you consider this evening and going forward as you develop your plans, that you consider these two options. One, the issues of people that have definite medical issues, and when you cannot even go within your own home and escape smoke. I think that crosses a line somewhere to me. It's one thing to not be able to sit outside and enjoy your yard. It's another thing not to be able to open your windows on a nice evening. But when, after closing your windows and staying in your house, you're still subjected to smoke, I think that crosses a line somewhere between what people should have to endure. But I also understand that if we can find a way to allow a waste disposal that is reasonable, at least offering a few more options, it might make it more acceptable to people who still would like to burn. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you. Arch Robinson.
Yeah, I'm Arch D. Robinson. I've lived 22 years in southwest Champaign at 1406 Country Lake Drive. We're just slightly north of the boundary down there. Dividing line runs down houses, actually between the backyards, just the block across the street from us. And the cats and air molecules don't obey it. Now, the cats aren't a bad thing, so bad, but yeah, the air quality does suffer. We don't have any life-threatening problems in my immediate family, but we do like to have clean air on the weekends, as somebody else said, and certainly my daughter's complained a lot. And I'd say it's more than the wood-burning fireplaces were brought up, but wood-burning fireplaces don't blanket the entire block in dense smoke that looks like a low cloud came through. Also, the issue of freedom came up. Well, economists have long looked at this issue. I mean, you have freedom to do things, but there's also something called externalities, costs paid by people who aren't involved in the transaction. In this case, the cost is paid by people who have to breathe this air that's full of smoke and they're not burning their leaves. The only other thing I would say is, yeah, the population density has changed. Things that made sense when things were sparse don't necessarily make sense when people are now in a much denser situation. I do appreciate that if people can't burn leaves, they do need a cost-effective alternative.
Thank you. That's all the slips I have. We still have time on our hour. Is there anyone else present? Yes, ma'am. Please, so that we can get it on the microphone, and then also if you would please fill out a slip just so we can get it in the record and turn it in before you leave. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Linda Dulaney, and I live in Edgewood subdivision. And what I hear here tonight, everybody's trying to be politically correct, but it all boils down to the fact there's a lot of people that have respiratory problems, which I do, which I carry the scar. I was on a respirator for 2 weeks at Carl, and I was in the hospital that time 42 days, 2 weeks on a respirator. I just think that what I hear tonight is everybody's worried about what it's going to cost them out of their pocket. You understand what I'm saying? To get rid of the leaves. That's what I'm hearing. They want an alternative to burning. But there is nothing worse than smoke from leaves and yard waste. Nothing. Everybody's politically correct. I told you I didn't want to come up. But I just, you know, I just feel for this lady that's got these kids. Because I know when somebody burns, it's like somebody puts clamps on my bronchial tubes. And you go, because you can't breathe. I have an oxygen machine out in the car. But 2 weeks on a respirator, and that little guy, to spend 11 days on a respirator, that's wrong. You know, for everybody to put their pocketbook ahead of other people's health is not right. It's not right. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yes, I'll fill out the slip and leave it on the way out.
Thank you.
My name is John Santos. I live in Cherry Hills, in the first phase of Cherry Hills that will not be annexed into the city of Champaign, and so we can burn, and the Champaign Townships provides our snow removal services and so forth. So this has been an education to listen to this, and it seems to me that what is needed is a ban on leaf burning, because that can be a nuisance. In our neighborhood, there are a few people that have a backyard fire pit and use that as a recreational fire, and it isn't a nuisance at all. And some people burn some brush when they do tree trimming, and brush burns not in a smudgy, smoky way like leaves. So having listened, I come to the conclusion that you need a leaf burning ban because it's obviously a nuisance. So I'll make that suggestion if there's a way to put wheels under that idea. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am. You come.
Hi, good evening. Thank you very much for holding this time for us to express our thoughts on this important issue. My name's Ruth Mitchell. I'm from Windsor Park, and I'm the former president of our local homeowners association. And I thought I could just speak a little bit to the leaf pickup, the yard waste pickup that we hold in our neighborhood, and Keith is the person who helps haul that away. And just to speak to the large uptake in our neighborhood that we have 3 times a year, I'd say, I mean, it varies, but we have over 50% of the community participating. We charge, I believe it's now $11, but for an unlimited, pretty much, number of bags. Keith can correct me on that one, but we know people can put out 30, 40 bags at a given pickup time. So it's very generous at a very cost-effective price. And we have also advertised to our neighbors a Good Samaritan organization who will come and help with the leaf collection and bagging for a nominal donation. We've actually had some people ask and call on that extra help. But nevertheless, we do have a few repeat leaf burners who often throw in a little bit of extra stuff, I guess. It smells that way, whatever it might be, plastic or whatever, and it can be extremely smoky, as described by everyone else. It's the same situation. It comes through your windows and whatnot, and if you don't feel like closing your doors and turning on your AC, you know, you're going to be having a nasty experience. And the other thing I also, I'm glad was also recently mentioned was the issue of population density. I'm not originally from this area, but I was surprised when I moved here that open burning was allowed in these areas that have, over the last 20, 25 years, become much more densely populated than they were originally when the neighborhoods started in the 60s in the case of Windsor Park. So I appeal to that issue of looking at population density. I mean, you just cannot get away from your neighbor who's, you know, just not terribly far away if they choose to burn. And at least in Windsor Park, we do have options. No one there has extremely large properties. We do have a lot of mature trees. And certainly I have many, many on my property, but, you know, we put out 30, 40 bags if we need to get them cleaned up. And we pay our trash hauler $2 a bag during the season to augment that. So I think that's all I have to say, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Ask again, anybody else at this point in time? Let her go again.
I just wanted to add one other thing. Somebody mentioned earlier that, well, you know, that's a relatively few number of complaints that was mentioned in the Gazette article, and if it's a matter of, well, we're not hearing many people calling to complain. When we started having this issue with people burning across the street from me in that, in the county area, we called the state EPA to find out, you know, why are they burning and where we can in Urbana and so forth. And I was told, well, there's this 1,000-foot setback around the city limit, but that hasn't been, either that's been held up for some reason, or it was just being disregarded and there really wasn't anything that could be done about it. So I quit trying. I quit calling the fire department. I quit calling the police to say there's illegal burning, or they're burning trash in with their leaves. And I also had a number of neighbors who are elderly who are also having a problem with it, but they are of a generation where they don't call. They don't call the city, they don't call authority. Either they don't have the time, they don't have the inclination to report a problem and see it through the number of offices that you get pushed to. Well, it's not our issue, you have to call so-and-so. So if it comes down to numbers, I would suggest let's find a way of really getting a sampling of how much of a problem this is. If it's going to come down to that, please see what you can get to put some numbers behind this, because I think it's a lot bigger than might be indicated by the small sample that of people that have called up and complained. Thank you.
How about a petition?
Yeah, petition been mentioned. That could be, I mean, we'd accept it. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Bill Earl, 2705 Willow Road, Urbana. That's out north of Urbana by Frasca Airport. I'm about 300 feet inside of of what your ban zone will account for Urbana. Now, all of our neighborhood, we have minimum 1 acre lots, all of which are loaded with mature trees. I've got 11 trees on my property. How do you suggest I'm going to get rid of my leaves when Urbana has no place to dispose of them? I just want to throw that question up in the air. I mean, I understand people have problems with their asthma and breathing problems. We're out here right on the very edge of this area, and we're going to be totally affected and have this shoved down our throats, and we've got with no alternative for disposal. No answers? That's what I figured.
Just to make it clear, we don't interact during public participation. It would just turn into a free-for-all probably at some point in time, so that's kind of why we don't really interact with the public. Anyone else at this point in time?
Isn't everybody aware that on University, there's a reclamation where you can take your leaves?
Probably most people know it, I would think, but probably don't want to pay the price as part of it. Yep. Seeing no other new hands, I'll close public participation and thank you all for coming again. We'll then move on to communications from the board. Any communications? And of course, if you want to stick around, we have the discussion. I will just mention that on the actual topic a little later. Thank you, Rick, for getting the microphone. Seeing no communications, we will then move on to more of our action items. We have 7 for information only. A, mid-course summary regarding status of LRMP implementation. And Ms. Monty passed out a one-page front and back sheet.
This is a very preliminary summary of simply numbers and raw data. I'd be happy to provide a more descriptive kind of summary at our next meeting. Essentially, 193 priority items, and on the back of the sheet is how those priority items are distributed amongst the goals, the 10 goals. And then on the front of the sheet is simply an indicator of quantities completed or in progress, mostly completed, 68% of the total, with 4% that have been essentially denied due to lack of sufficient votes by the county board. So that's it, a very brief overview summary. I have all of the raw data research done, but I really haven't provided much more than this for tonight.
Okay, questions or comments? I know we haven't had a lot of time to look this over, but it sounds like we're going to get a better report coming up. Ms. Petrie.
When you give us the more robust report, I need a little help in understanding your goals of doing this and where you want to take us with this project, okay?
Any other questions? Seeing none, okay, we will move on then to B, fiscal year 2017, budget proposal for an additional staff position in the Department of Planning and Zoning. John?
Yeah, I wanted to give the committee a heads up that I've been giving you monthly reports on the MS4 stormwater program. Remind you that just as late as March this year, they strengthened or made several requirements greater than they were previously. This program has a tendency to grow over time. I don't ever see that ending. You saw the memo about the EPA audit in January. They were very easy in the way they didn't say we were in violation. They just said we were in non-compliance. And they asked for new deadlines for completing the storm system sewer map. Prepared those deadlines, and The deadline was prepared assuming mostly intern help, but also assistance from the senior planner and myself. And then in the first half of this year, we received more zoning cases than we've received in any year previously for the past couple years. So a tremendous increase in zoning cases means the senior planner has no time to help. We've also had an increase in permitting, and the combination of permitting and zoning case increases means that the director has not much time to help. And this project is too critical to leave just to interns. Interns are very capable on some things, and we can continue with the schedule that I gave you earlier, but I don't think it's very likely that we would meet those deadlines. So that and the fact that we already know we have ongoing needs for staffing. Once we get the storm sewer system map, we have to make annual inspections. That's a new requirement. We also have to make annual inspections to monitor to see how well our storm water management is actually working. That's a new requirement. And so all of these things added together led me to believe I should request a whole new staff person for our department to deal with its MS4 projects, primarily MS4 projects for the first couple of years. After that, I would imagine half their time would be MS4 projects, and then they could help out in other aspects of our department. Obviously, that's not the only way to attack this problem. We could shift more of the RPC planning contract to the MS4 program. So far, we've been spending no more than 200 hours a year on the MS4 program in that contract. I talked to Susan and Rita, and since the June ELUC meeting where they first proposed the 2017 contract, I asked them to shift everything possible to MS4. So in your agenda is a revised planning contract proposal for 2017. 60% of that contract is MS4 hours. I think it's unfortunate that the county might have to halt progress on the LRMP in order to deal with stormwater, but the state does not have a requirement that you have an LRMP. The state does have a requirement that you have an MS4 program. If you don't meet the requirements of that MS4 program, you will find yourself in a violation situation with the EPA. I don't know when that might occur. We've been there once. I don't want that to happen again if I can do anything to stop it, and that's why I'm making this request. Regarding the current planning contract, I made Rita and Susan aware in April that I wanted to see changes to that contract. We've talked about it since. We believe that we actually need to shift resources from the LRMP for the rest of this year in the 2016 contract. So that's another item on your agenda tonight. Again, most of the shift is for the preparation of the storm sewer system map, but another new requirement that was added in March of this year is to have at least one annual public meeting where the county board receives comments regarding environmental justice issues. As it happens, Rita Black and her staff at Kuwat's have already done a lot of work on that issue. The work that they've done already could be of great benefit and would take none of my staff time, but it would take Rita's staff time because they haven't done it for the stormwater program. So that's one of the changes to the 2016 contract and for 2017. And that's one new requirement of the MS4 program that you can be in absolute compliance with without affecting my department operations at all. And you'll be having an expert do it with Rita Black and her staff. So that's a short overview of that memo. It's for information only because this committee is not the final say on hiring new staff. And yet, I need your help if that staff is going to be approved. And that's why I gave you this memo.
Discussion. Ms. Petrie.
Previously, I went on the record agreeing with John's need and his potential request. It wasn't definitive at that time, it was potential. At that point in time, I did ask to see some figures as to what would be the cost for an additional staff member along with benefits as compared to contracting out this work as the example of what McLean County does. That doesn't mean that I don't support John and his staff, but I am wondering if that is another alternative of which John didn't mention this evening. I've also been on the public record for years that I do not think it's best planning practice to have this bifurcation of a contract. And it makes it very difficult, and it makes it difficult for any planning office not to have a clear flow of being able to shift work around when things such as this come up. I do have two questions related to page 6, the second bullet point, and it has to do with the boundaries. And if my memory is serving me correctly, when these boundaries were set, part of that conversation was setting the boundaries for the whole county, and the vote was not to do that. There will come a time when those boundaries will stretch out for the whole county. Is that correct? Am I remembering correctly, John? It's been a long time ago since we had that meeting.
In fact, yeah, the EPA had suggested that we should
Yeah, I know
apply
they
this
did.
program
But
to
that
the
wasn't
1,000
the vote.
square miles
Yeah,
of the county. Well,
that's right.
I actually didn't ask for a vote. I just assumed that was not feasible. If this committee wants to apply to the whole county, then, that might take even more staff. I don't know. But I have heard it said on more than one occasion, a lot of people expect that in 2020, after the next census, I have heard it said there's a good chance that we may be required to take it to the whole county.
That's what I was remembering from that meeting. I thought it did go to a vote, but I voted for it. That's my memory, but it went down. So I would think that is something for consideration in relationship to, as you think this through for another staff member, or what that might cost, or the feasibility, or if that's sort of a part 2 of your plan down the line. And then on the third bullet point, you say that there's a potential that this full-time position, when things get caught up or things like that, that person might be able to help on some other of the planning issues. All right, so that's good to know. Thank you.
And just to clarify, again, the EPA can never tell us how to fulfill their requirements, but they will tell us if we don't. And so on the storm sewer system map, I have always explained that as it would be our MS4 area, but then also include all of our county highways, because all county facilities come under the MS4 requirements. So you could ask your county engineer to do the storm sewer system map for all of the county highways, but I'm assuming at this point that would at least be a joint venture with our office. So we're planning to do that work. That's actually the second phase.
I'll be glad to do that Friday at the Highway Committee meeting.
Anyone else? Mr. Weibel.
Well, I guess this is, John asked us for our opinions. My viewpoint is, let's try it, John. If we don't get it, well, then we'll come up with plan B.
I can come up with plan C, D, and E also, but
Well,
I'm really hoping this plan
We don't
works.
need that yet.
And it's not in the memo, but I did ask a local consulting engineer for a ballpark figure on preparing our storm sewer system map, because that would be the best map. And the ballpark figure was around $60,000.
Mr. Harper.
I'm assuming, since the EPA is mandating all this stuff, they've offered to help pay for it? I mean, it's just another one of the things, I mean, where do they think the money's coming from?
Actually, it's not the EPA, it's all comes from the Clean Water Act. So when your federal legislators passed the Clean Water Act, this was the result. The EPA has the unfortunate job of enforcing it.
And interpreting.
Mr. Schrader.
Well, that's true, John, but EPA is interpreting the Clean Water Act. And the argument is the Clean Water Act wasn't specific enough. So we have to be more specific, but yet we're vague. So in other words, what you've said, John, is, well, we'll write up this plan, but we won't know until we know whether or not the plan's good. So, you know, it's just amazing from US EPA that, you know, we have these decrees, but yet we don't know what we want until we know it. So I guess as long as you don't piss them off, it's all right. You know, this whole thing just really irks me. Talk about overhanding this, folks. This is way over the top. And like you said, I'm not disagreeing with you, John. It's all from the Clean Water Act. But then again, the administration says it's vague. But yet they're vague. So here's the height of hypocrisy. Yeah, I'm just sick of this. We're going to spend a ton of money, and we're not going to know whether or not we're in compliance or not. I mean, we can go ahead and do things that have, and we've got examples that have been in compliance, but we won't know till we know. So this is ridiculous.
And I just wanted to say, when we do these things, we're not trying to win awards with our MS4 program. We're only trying to do the minimum.
Right, so we don't get sued.
Any other discussion on this item? Seeing none, then we will go over to the addendum. We have C, notice of application for permit to manage waste at former Champaign Municipal Landfill located at 3616 West Bloomington Road, US Route 150, Champaign. And this is information only. So, yeah, so you're taking it, John? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, if you have any questions, we received both these notices. It's not that I thought the committee necessarily wanted to do anything, but I just wanted to make sure you're aware of this. I think in each instance, it's just that they're trying to do a better job at each landfill. It's not like they're under a violation notice or anything like that.
Okay, so those comments apply to both C
Yes.
and D here
Yes.
with the, and D, I'll read it into the record so we can kind of discuss both if we want to a little bit. Notice of application for permit to manage waste at Rantoul Municipal Landfill located at County Road 3200 North and County Road 1800 East, Rantoul. So, and if there's any other discussion on that or just, since it is just for information. Oh, Ms. Petrie.
Yeah, just a couple one clarification questions. Remind me, are either of these over the aquifer?
The Champaign landfill is certainly over the aquifer. The Rantoul Municipal Landfill, I believe, is probably north of it.
Any other discussion? Oh, sorry, Astrid.
What does it mean? What does it mean to manage waste? I mean, they've got waste. What does it mean to manage it? How is that changing things?
Probably not changing thing, but it alerts you that this is not a new operation. It's an ongoing operation is what I think it means.
Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Monty. Susan.
Both of these landfills are closed and in remediation stages. At the Rantoul landfill, it's some kind of leakage happening that they want to refix the membrane and grade it out. So that's work by the village that they would like to do. And the other one is a similar kind of situation where the landfill is in remediation stages and they just want to do something to make it better.
Thank you, Susan. Any other discussion? Seeing none, then we will move on to 8. Items to receive and place on file by ELEC committee to allow for 30-day review period. And we have A, the proposed landscape waste burning ordinance. And we have Ms. Monty.
This proposal is for a Champaign County landscape waste burning restriction, as you know. And at the February meeting in 2015, ELEC members requested that we research and propose a workable landscape waste burn ordinance that the county could administer and enforce. So our team with John Hall brought forward this proposal to amend the Champaign County Public Nuisance Ordinance to prohibit the open burning of landscape waste within certain areas designated in the unincorporated areas. And so we'll go over this briefly for you, certain portions of this proposal. So to start with a few defined terms that are pretty important, open burning is defined here and in our proposal. And it's the combustion of any matter in such a way that the products of the combustion are emitted to the open air without originating in or passing through equipment for which a permit could be issued by the Illinois EPA. So that's open burning in general. Landscape waste includes, it's a defined term as well, and it includes trees, tree trimmings, branches, stumps, brush, weeds, leaves, grass, shrubbery, and yard trimmings. It does not include garbage, trash, food or food product garbage, or agricultural waste, also defined terms.
Mr. Weibel.
Susan?
Can you take a minute?
Garden material,
What about it?
is that landscape waste?
I would say so, if it's cuttings or trimmings
Okay,
or straw, for example.
okay.
And we're not going to talk about this right away, but restricted burn area, and that's also a defined term, as you see here. I would like to just for a moment say that the state of Illinois, I passed out some of the brochures, already restricts open burning of trash and garbage and certain other things, but not the open burning of landscape waste. So local governments have the authority to go and exceed the state regulations in this regard. And so that has happened here in Champaign County with the cities of Champaign and Urbana, the village of Mahomet, and the village of St. Joe. They completely prohibit open burning of landscape waste within their corporate limits. So Kathleen would like to talk about the nature and types of the complaints that have been received.
Yes, when this was requested that we'll start researching a proposal, that was really prompted by complaints about open burning of landscape waste, largely from residents who live in the prospective restricted burn area and who suffer from, or whose family members suffer from, respiratory illnesses that are exacerbated by the smoke from landscape waste burning, and other complaints that it's both a public health and a quality of life issue. The table that's in our memo in attachment D reflects complaints that were received in the past from the IEPA Region 3 Bureau of Air, but is not reflective of complaints received by other agencies. 18 came in 2014 to the Bureau of Air, 12 in 2015, and so far in 2016 there have been 13. And over the course of researching the issue, we met with stakeholders in the city of Champaign, city of Urbana, village of Rantoul, Mahomet, and Savoy. And the unincorporated areas immediately around Savoy, Mahomet, and Rantoul did not seem to have the need or desire at this particular juncture, that it would not be ideal to include them in any proposal going forward at this time.
So we're going to describe the proposal. There are two options, and both refer to a restricted burn area, and both define this as the unincorporated area extending 1,000 feet beyond the boundaries of the city of Champaign and city of Urbana. Well, this is option A, slightly different for option B, and including the entirety of any residential subdivision that intersects the 1,000-foot distance and all areas completely surrounded by the city of Champaign or city of Urbana. So this first diagram is included in the memorandum, and it describes the restricted burn area, or illustrates it for option A. And you can see completely enclosed areas would be included in this as a restricted burn area. And you can see that the bright blue areas reflect or indicate the restricted burn areas for these areas. Look between the cities of Champaign and Urbana at that blue area where Mount Hope Cemetery is. Lots of burning goes on there, and it's very disruptive to persons trying to be on campus and passing through campus, and it happens quite often. And open burn complaints have been received about that burning as well. So that type of area would be covered by this kind of a restriction.
Ms. Petrie?
Susan, while you had that map up there, when I was studying the materials, it seems mostly on the Urbana side, at the top and at the bottom, within the restricted burn areas, there are white spaces.
Right. Those are not completely enclosed. It's hard to tell from this thumbnail kind of map, but those are like peninsulas. They're not completely enclosed, where the city does not completely surround that area, just the 1,000 foot. And there's no residential subdivisions in there to be concerned about either, as I recall. So.
Now or never?
Well, at the time, now. So if you'd like a larger scale map that's easier to read, we can certainly provide that.
No, my question is, there are these three areas. It looks to me like there's only three areas, so we are looking at something that allows these three very small areas, relatively speaking, which will someday you'll have to go back and revisit as development happens there.
So you'd like to see if those could be addressed perhaps in some way as needed?
As we move along on this, it seems to make sense, okay?
All right.
Sort of like those boundaries on the MS4.
So this is a graphic to illustrate option A. This is a graphic that would illustrate option B that still uses a similar type of definition of 1,000 foot wide restricted burn area. However, it's limited only in areas where a local government jurisdiction provides a landscape waste collection alternative. And that's also a defined term. Essentially, that is an alternative for the removal of landscape waste from properties within a restricted burn area other than that of an individual owner paying a fee to drop off landscape waste at the Landscape Waste Recycling Center in Urbana, or paying a service provider or contractor to collect the landscape waste from the property on which the landscape waste was generated. So that's option B. And at present, only Champaign Township provides this kind of, is the only local government in the, in this, for township area that would provide this type of a service to its residents.
Mr. Schrader had a question, I believe.
Susan, well, it's on both maps, so you don't have to go back to option A map. But two questions. On Mount Hope, who does the burning and what's it for?
Okay. So that's one of the open burn complaints that has been received by the IEPA Bureau of Air, and it's essentially the cemetery maintenance operations. They constantly burn, and the IEPA staff person who receives these complaints is especially irritated about this and frustrated because there is no county landscape waste burn ordinance that allows him to say, hey, you can't do that. So he says there are maintenance people leave the burning of landscape waste smoldering all the time, or very often, not all the time, but often, unattended kind of burning and frequent.
Are they burning trimmings and leaves? Is that what they're burning?
I would guess with a cemetery with trees like that and a lot of landscape work and maintenance that occurs to keep it neat, that there is quite a bit of landscape waste.
And the other thing too is another anomaly on that map above the letter A in Champaign, that little blue, kind of like a L-shaped, what? Or a seven shape of a seven.
You know, I
What
want
is
to
that?
say that's the Kraft Humco complex.
That's Kraft. Okay, that's what I thought, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, in summary, that is a description of the restricted burn area and where it would apply. Now, attachment F includes listings of alternatives that we have identified that are commonly considered by residents, and that includes more acceptable kinds of means of dealing with landscape waste, especially leaves, is to just leave them on the lawn while you're mowing, to have them be shredded and to add nutrients to the soil, or to mulch your grass clippings and or shredding of leaves while mowing, and then using these to mulch around your on-site, around shrubs and garden plants, or to mulch the grass clippings or the shredded leaves while mowing and collect these and create an on-site compost pile. And then, of course, the options that would cost, as has been identified, is to collect these and bring them to the Landscape Recycling Center for a fee, per bag fee, average. One carload would be on average $5. A larger pickup would be more like $9 perhaps per load. So it's not as low cost as the option described by Champaign Township, for example. And then to a final available leaf burning alternative that was identified was to simply have a contractor pick them up from your property and take them away. So listed here is a description on in attachment F of the Champaign Township Landscape Waste Burning Program, just that option described. And we show its location of that burn pit. And you can see it's very convenient to residents of Champaign Township to use that. And the burn restrictor, air restrictor, is in use, and it addresses the smoke problem for the most part, as was described by Mr. Paget. So there may or may not be a need for this facility to get an IEPA operational permit, and so that's between the IEPA and the township, but as long as that issue is addressed, it should be not an issue with this ordinance that we are proposing, because we allow for exemptions for local government agencies to do monitored controlled burning if it's a landscape waste situation and it's in compliance with IEPA permit requirements. So that's all I really wanted to talk about other than enforcement. I do have notes about that, just briefly.
Ms. Berkshire. Microphone. Yep. Thanks, John.
I have a problem as a mother of a kid who missed Monday school all fall for 12 years. 3F6, page 14. There are all sorts of little developments of 4, 6, 8 houses. This says if the burning is separated from adjacent dwellings on another party and fields by amount does not have to exceed 100 feet, then they can burn. And, you know, if you've got 6 houses and one of them has a severely asthmatic kid, 100 feet just isn't going to do any good. That kid's going to be very sick. I don't understand the purpose for that thing at all.
Okay, so maybe that would be interesting to try to map. It would have to be mapped for enforcement purposes on a case-by-case basis to make these measurements of separation distance. So maybe we could do a spot check or make some sense out of this so that it's meaningful for this proposal.
There must be some distance at which the smoke is less serious, but 100 feet isn't it? And especially when you're burning things full of mold like leaves, because that just takes that mold right through the
I think this particular provision would probably address the needs of some of the people that talked today about being on the edge and not thinking that they would be impacting any of their neighbors. So it could be a good thing for those kind of properties. But my take on this is that this kind of burn ordinance proposal is going to be effective perhaps in 80 to 90% of the cases where burning occurs, and it's going to reduce a lot of the adverse impacts being experienced by people around the edges of the cities of Champaign and Urbana. But
If I could, the purpose is to set a standard for how far you have to be away from other dwellings, assuming that you have dwellings all around you. Now, well, in many cases, they won't even have 100 feet. We could, I think, add a provision in here for, you know, an instance like the gentleman earlier described where he was on the border and there were part of his property that wasn't even within 1,000 feet of a dwelling. This sort of assumes you would use common sense, and this gives you a guideline to use when you don't really see an alternative and you have a house on all sides of, say, a 1 acre lot. So we were assuming a worst case with this standard. And there really is no good outcome when you're surrounded by houses and you have no more than 100 feet to any one house. You know, you're going to probably cause a problem for somebody.
So how is it, you know, that you can't do this in Windsor Park or Cherry Hills, but out in, if you get out beyond this 1,000 feet, then 100 feet is enough protection.
I'm not aware that we've ever had a burning complaint beyond that 1,000-foot area, actually.
Because we've been told that there is no reason, it's no good complaining.
Well, that could certainly be part of it. But beyond that, there is just a much lower population density. And there's not as many trees, in fact.
yeah. Did you want to say something? Okay. There are other counties in Illinois that have adopted landscape waste burn restrictions, and some by zip code. They're all in the densely populated counties around the edges of the northern counties around Chicago, McHenry, Winnebago, Kane, and DuPage. So I can look and see if they have a similar provision, such as we're considering and discussing right now. All right, so with regard to enforcement, and then that's really all we wanted to point out, was that this would be an enforcement of the proposed amendment to the nuisance ordinance, and it would be enforcement activity by the planning and zoning staff, and that fire protection districts are not required to take any enforcement action. And the timing of this was also described in the memo, so at the next meeting, if the ELEC made a recommendation and if the county board took action at their September 22nd meeting, that the new regulations, as soon as they could be effective, would be 10 days later on October 2nd. So, thank you.
Ms. Petrie.
Susan, I do have a number of things that I hope maybe will encourage everyone to go back to the drawing board. Some of it is stimulated by what I heard this evening. Some of it has to do with the conversation you and I had since I missed the agenda setting meeting and you brought me up to date on aspects. When you and I talked, one of the things that I pondered is why aren't we looking at this as more in a regional perspective? And I think one of the comments that we heard this evening sort of relates to that aspect. The way I read what's proposed, there are tough aspects of it to make certain that it does get implemented, and it's totally dependent on complaints. So I don't see much avenue of how the registering of complaints and such is documented in what is being proposed, and it seems very clear from the comments I'm hearing this evening that we really don't know how many complaints, because there doesn't seem to be any funneling where you can aggregate this, so we don't know that severity of the issue from the population. And some people have mentioned that they've been discouraged because they didn't feel there was any response rate to their phone calls. That's one thing. Second thing, I do think there is some legitimacy in the comments that people are mentioning there's no alternatives being mentioned here. I would shape it in a different way, and that is there are no incentives in what is being proposed that might indeed change behavior. This is punitive. It isn't a positive direction. And I'll give myself as an example. I haul literally by myself at least 40 bags of leaves to my property to mulch them, beyond what I get myself. So to me, a next logical step is how do we encourage some organized effort that Mr. X has a whole bunch of leaves and I would like them. How do we make connections like that? This happens all over the community. Fortunately, I have a lot of people around me who do bag their leaves, but that is one way of doing it. We could leverage other things. There's nothing in here, how do we make things educational? I've been here 45 years, and I came from Evanston, and we didn't have burning in Evanston over 45 years ago, and I came here, and it took us a long time to get Champaign and Urbana to stop burning, and it was a lot of educating. I too have asthma, so I really appreciate that we don't have those kind of aspects in our air. And I'm not sure 1,000 feet is sufficient, because it depends on the day and it depends on the goodwill of the people to use common sense not to burn. Air drifts and smoke drifts, and so there are some things that I do think that it would be turning us into a more positive framework for the whole county, not just this restricted burn area. I mean, it drifts. We drive through the county and we can smell drifting, and you wonder where it's coming from, and you find it's more than 1,000 feet away. I know my ask here does put off your timeline a little bit. I understand that. But I do think it is worthwhile putting off a timeline so that what is finally considered as we go through the various procedural steps and it gets to the county board, that it is robust and really implementable. And I right now have some current concerns that the implementation may have some bumps in the road. And then the last thing, if you could go back to the second map where the restricted burn area is principally on the western side of Champaign. And you can see it better here. Up in the northwest part of that map, there's a white spot, and then there's blue, and then there's a sort of purple space and more blue. Is that a similar circumstance that I pointed out when the restricted burn area surrounded all the boundaries of both Champaign and Urbana? Is that opening up a can of worms for more issues?
I think we need to have more information on the map to answer that. I'm
Okay.
thinking that's where the I-57 interchange might be, but I'm not sure.
Oh, well, maybe it could
Actually,
be.
that's the dividing line between Champaign
Somebody's gotta answer it.
Township
Oh,
and Hensley Township. So the reason there's the blue part, the bright blue part is,
Thank you.
that part is in Champaign Township. Champaign Township provides an alternative. The lighter part on top is Hensley Township. Hensley Township provides no alternative, so there would be no burning restriction there. That's the Dobbins Downs area in general.
Mr. Padgett, as
okay.
township, did you want to,
Okay.
Commissioner?
Do you want to
make
come
a-
to the mic so it's
Yeah,
on the
please.
record,
Yes,
please?
please. You could use the one at the end here.
Keith Badgett, Champaign Township Highway Commissioner again. That area, as commonly known as I called it for years when I was with the Urbana-Champaign Sanitary District for 18 years, everyone calls that Dobbins Downs. The blue part that you see is Dobbins Downs. The divide line between Champaign Township and Hensley Township is the back side of the property on Dobbins Drive. The area that is in the light blue is actually called Western Hills in Hensley Township. So you call it Dobbins Downs if you want to, but it's not.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you.
Further discussion, Mr. Harper?
The thing I don't like about this whole deal is the 30-day here. I think there's been a lot of issues raised, and I understand the health issues. You know, I live in the country on a farm. When we get flooded waters in spring, I know it's not land or lawn waste, but we go out and burn it. Well, just like Patsy said, that drifts. But I mean, if we keep adding 1,000 feet here and 1,000 feet there, I think one of the gentlemen brought up the fact, I think we need to have some more studies on the economic impact of these people that do burn and don't want to pay. I mean, there seems some questions here that have arisen that I think 30 days is pushing the issue. I think there needs to be some other studies done to give these people an alternative from burning. I'm not against burning myself, but I know Jamie's sitting there in St. Joe. The village picks that up, right? Does it cost the? Doesn't cost. So the village picks it up free.
They take it to the outside of town and burn, and in the fall you go drive into a cloud of smoke.
Yeah, well, it's on the west side of town. The west winds, it goes back over town anyway. So yeah, I know. I drive by it. I don't live very far from that. So you open up one can of worms and you start another one. So I sympathize with the health issues, but I don't want to rush into something until we do some more study on some alternatives. You know, it's great that Champaign Township has that pit. That's fine, but not everybody's going to do that. So I'm not in favor of pushing this fast. Thank you.
Mr. Heiser?
I am very much in favor of this. And just one note first before I kind of get into my point. I think this idea of saying we can't do this because it's going to lead to another 1,000 feet and another 1,000 feet. It's a slippery slope argument, which and we've heard it a couple times, but it's not really valid. It's not going to help us with this conversation right now. We've heard a lot of current issues with children and elderly people and others that have health issues, where this is an issue right now, and this right now addresses that, and even plan option A, in my opinion, would be even better. You know, when I hear this, I think about some of my students, because I'm an elementary teacher, and just how asthma is really pervasive amongst kids these days. And we heard the story about the woman's child here tonight, where he had to go to the hospital. I have a couple of students who have asthma that is that severe that if this were to happen to them, that could place them in a similar situation. So yes, I understand that there are bumps in the road. I do think that perhaps the county or the other townships should look into similar options as Champaign Township has. But there are options right now if we were to implement this where they could go and either take care of themselves or talk to neighbors, as Patsy said. So I'm very much in favor of this.
Further discussion, Mr. Schrader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the participation. Y'all came out tonight and spoke what you need to speak, and I appreciate, and I think we need to, as a committee and as our ELUC staff, needs to go back and look at all their alternatives and some of the points that were made, good points, and look to see. And when I mentioned just alternatives, I think that maybe there's some ideas brought up from the crowd and also here from the committee about other alternatives to removal of yard waste and the such, and disposal of it in a costly way, not, or inexpensive way, I should say, not in a costly way, because most of this obviously is very costly to homeowners. And that's just another expense that people really can't afford. A lot of fixed incomes and things, and that's just another expense. You know, we're blessed with a lot of trees in this community, and that's great, but we're also burdened with the leaf that they leave. No pun intended, but and it was also brought up too about you know, another unexpected or maybe expected happenstance that could happen if we do, as a county board, opt for the whole option 1 or option A, I guess. The intended consequence could be there's a lot more debris left out in the rural roads, rural ditches and things like that. And once they get out there, folks, they'll probably blow back to town, at least on the edge of town. So, yeah, and the flooding can occur too if we have leaves and debris out there that'll cause things that will back up on the ditches and drainage. That's also out there. So, I guess when we first discussed this, we were looking at strictly kind of a grass clipping, leaves, anti-leaf burning ordinance, and I'm kind of torn maybe because those generate a lot of smoke, obviously, and we all know that. But from the standpoint of burning wood, really doesn't generate that much. Probably from the initial start, it will. If it's green, it'll smoke a lot, but eventually it'll burn pretty clean from the standpoint of smoke. And it's not moldy. That's right. It burns, if there is mold, astrid, it will burn off pretty quick because of the heat of the wood is far more than that of leaves. So I'm wondering if we couldn't look into maybe just excluding wood from the ordinance. Just throwing out some ideas. But I think the county board needs to look at one of the two options. As long as they're tweaked, and like I said before, I know you probably want some guidance from the county board what to look for. And looking back when we get the minutes up, I think there is probably some ideas that we maybe need to look at for the September ELEC meeting with a 30-day period and everything. So I'm not going to say right now I'm for either option, but I think that we need to look a little further after testimony tonight. Some other things have come up, so I'm going to leave it at that.
Ms. Berkson.
I think that if the medical costs were put in the balance against everyone's complaints about the cost of bagging and disposing of them, this side would come in very heavy. I don't think people have any idea of what the costs are, the medical costs are of leaf burning.
Can I say something? My respiratory medicine.
We've had public participation, please. Mr. Padgett's a local official. That's why we let him speak for some clarification. Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Hall.
I'm wondering if the committee, looking at this map that is still on the screen, the options, I can imagine investigating options for that might apply in townships where there is no alternative provided by, say, township government. But in Champaign Township, where there is a good alternative already provided, I'm wondering if the committee thinks that, you know, that part of this amendment, are you comfortable with that part at least, and then pursuing less restrictive alternatives that might apply in the other townships? I mean, in regards to Champaign Township, where there's already an alternative, is this thing workable the way it is?
If you were looking at me when you're asking the questions,
I
I'll
didn't mean to.
respond. No, I think that's a great alternative. What what Champaign Township has for destruction of leaves and clippings, so I wish it was all available throughout the whole county. But from that standpoint, yeah, I like that part of the option, absolutely. It's a way of getting away, low cost or a lower cost way of handling this, and yet having a real positive effect on conditions, the human conditions of things.
If the other townships were required to buy the service from Champaign Township or else supply it themselves, that might work nicely.
Any further, Mr. Weibel?
Thank you. Just a couple comments. I own a house in Champaign, old part of Champaign, roughly half acre. I've got 6 mature trees, 4 of them on the west side of the property. I produce lots of leaves. I hate climbing up to the second floor of my house to clean the gutters. I have to do it every year. I have a 4-foot tall chain link fence in my backyard, which keeps the dogs in as well as most of the leaves. I've got 2 more trees on the east side of the property, which probably go to the neighbor's lot, but I have neighbors to the west of me. I hate bagging leaves, but I also mulch them and compost them every year. Sometimes I do it in the spring if the weather doesn't cooperate in the fall, but I do not burn them and I do not put them on the curbside either. In fact, I enjoy watching the neighbors do that because I don't do it myself. I also have a wife who's asthmatic. I've driven her to Carl Hospital emergency room numerous times, not caused by my fires. I can tell you the expense of going to the emergency room is much more than putting leaves out on curbside and having them picked up. What else? I do burn sticks occasionally. I have one of these they call them fire pits, but they're really more like cauldrons with legs on them, which is legal in Champaign. That's a question for John or Susan. If I live in, say, Cherry Hills, unincorporated Cherry Hills, could I burn wood in one of these so-called fire pits, or they're not really pits? If, say, this ordinance was passed, either one.
We could clarify that exactly. I believe there's limitations on the recreational fire standards, 3x3 with use of a burn pit. There are some standards that are set.
3x3.
Feet.
Well, what the burn pit is defined as.
I don't have those in front of me,
Okay,
but we
is that something
certainly could provide
could be
them.
something on the ground that's surrounded by stone or something like that, not elevated? So you could have you could have a bonfire, at least not a huge one, but 3 feet by 3, which is not bad size. Okay, a clarification that would be actually very worthwhile. Several people, one person suggested, and John reiterated the fact that smoke is mostly caused by leaves, green leaves, of course, or actually not green leaves, and dried leaves that are not properly burned, also by green wood. So I think it'd be worthwhile looking into banning leaf burning, and also ban all green material. Because, well, that's green material. Now the question is, is that practical or not? Something you have to look into. I mean, how do you define them and things like that? Question.
And option B, even though it doesn't establish a burning restriction in the other townships, it does provide guidelines so that if somebody is burning in such a way as to create a lot of smoke, that would be an enforcement action. Now, that's actually very difficult to put that down on paper, and yet I'm hoping we get some help from fire protection districts in that regard. So even though there would be no burning restriction in the other 3 townships, you would have to follow these guidelines, and that's going to help to a certain extent. It should reduce the smoke. Now, the smoke's going to happen first, and then we'll get a complaint, we'll contact the bad burner and things like that. So there would be some marginal improvement just in having guidelines in place.
Another thing, people have said that if these rules are implemented, you will see more material be dumped other places. Well, totally, absolutely true. It happened after Champaign and Urbana banned burning within city limits. But eventually it stopped. People got used to it. People discovered alternatives, so they started having compost piles or mulching with a lawnmower or combinations of both. So you will see that happening, but it won't go on forever. I think that's it. Thank you.
Further comments, Mr. Harper.
I just got a question for Mr. Paget. What does a system like that cost to put in?
If you're willing to
If you're willing to
speak
speak,
again,
yeah.
and please come again forward to the microphone.
Champaign Township Highway Commissioner Keith Paget again. Just checking with the supervisor right there. When we had that rehabbed in 2013, he believes it's about $80,000 to rehab that. I had a list of this to tell you, but I kind of got off my sheet. When that was put in 2002, it had 8-inch structural walls reinforced with steel. It had 3/4 inches of refractory concrete on the inside, which keeps that thing from burning up. But it did burn for 10 years, so then I had to have it redone. It was starting to push in. So I had it rehabbed as in having 12-inch structure walls with steel inside, and then 3 inches of refractory concrete on the inside. The information I got off the internet, when you burn that, you can reduce your volume by 98%. You're burning all the air out of it. If you got 2 dump truck loads of brush to burn up, you end up with less than a pickup truck load of, so that's what that is for. It works very well to reduce the volume. To have all these bags tagged and go to the landfill, is all this gonna go to the landfill? It won't, but a lot of it will. The LRC out here in Urbana takes that. Pretty costly to haul it out there in the fall. The pickup is in about the middle of October, then also in November. The November pickup, the bags sitting out there, residents can put tarps over top of them. We appreciate that quite a bit. Sometimes they're full of snow. When they get wet like that, I do haul them over there. It costs me to haul them over there rather than be able to burn those as the program does. So, thank you.
Ms. Petrie, do you have
I have an information question. How do you recycle the ash that comes from all this burning?
The ash is dipped out of there with a excavator and put into what I call a dirt corral. It's a round hole of dirt, and it's cooled out for 30 days. And then it's hauled to the Clinton landfill, and a dump truck load of ash costs right at $500 to dispose of. That's a lot of money, but that's a big pile of brush can burn down to almost nothing.
Yeah, but that could be recycled and used for things in your yards and gardens too.
Well, the problem is I don't know what comes in those bags. It can be a broken shovel, it can be a rake. I don't know a farmer that's wanting mystery stuff dumped out there in his field. The city of Champaign did come up with some sort of alternative. They got hold of I think he's a dairy farmer somewhere over close to Vermilion County, and they haul that over there. I can't imagine a dairy farmer that wants cows lay on a bunch of sticks and stuff and pop cans and whatever might go in there to go off of the property. So there's no real easy answer to it, but we'll comply with whatever kind of comes around. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Paget, for being willing to speak again and answer questions. Further discussion. Do you have any questions for us, Susan, or think you have enough? Go ahead, Patsy.
Yes, I do have another one when it relates to food and food product waste. There are people who are now taking that from different grocery stores. I do know somebody who does it from the co-op, takes it out there and is making a business out of it. So I'm not certain why that's going there. Several of us worked with the co-op in getting this set up, and it's working just fine. And so there are other alternatives to reduce all of this, and I really do encourage, as we move along, at least these getting folded in and more incentives getting folded in so people do change their behavior pattern. As Mr. Weibel mentioned, over time, people did get educated and things changed within the metropolitan area.
Any further? Seeing none, thank you, Susan and Kathleen, for your work thus far. Oh, Mr. Weibel.
Mr. Hall, do you think you have received enough direction on what to move on?
Yeah,
Okay,
I think we
thank
got
you.
some good direction.
Good question, Pius, thanks. Okay, we will then move on to 9 items to be approved by ELUC. And if there's no objections under A, we'll take this as an omnibus. I'll read them both into the minutes, the way they're presented, and then we'll take it as an omnibus to approve them both since they're the same corporation. Is that fine? So we have A, we have the recreation and entertainment license for Maria Guadalupe Flores Rojas, doing business as El Dorado Corporation, for Mexican dancing with live band and DJ at the Champaign County Fair Association Fairgrounds, 1302 North Kohler Avenue, Urbana, Illinois, August 27th through August 28th, 2016. And then we have II, recreation and entertainment license, Maria Guadalupe Flores Rojas, doing business as El Dorado Corporation, for Mexican rodeo with dancing, live band, and DJ at the Champaign County Fair Association Fairgrounds, 1302 North Kohler Avenue, Urbana, Illinois, September 10th through September 11th, 2016. And is there such a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Petrie, seconded by Mr. Heiser. Discussion, Mr. Weibel.
John, is this the 3rd and 4th such event? Did we pass one of these last month?
Yes, these are 2 additional events.
Okay, all right, well, all right.
Ms. Burks. Oh.
Stupid question, but why are these redacted?
You have to provide personal information on the applications, and so we have to redact that because we don't want driver's license numbers and social security numbers, things.
And I'll just ask John a question. In the agenda setting meeting, you mentioned maybe if this is going to keep occurring, seeing if they can maybe do it as a yearly permit or something to that effect. I mean,
Yeah, I'm going to ask the clerk if, the thing is, I think they sort of come up with these, they seem to come up with these dates irregularly, but if they could set an annual calendar, I think they could get their own annual permit, but whatever works for them, I guess.
okay, I guess not that it's too hard for us to do this as a committee, but it'd be once and done for the year if that would work out. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Okay, thank you. That passes. Move on then to B. We have the Champaign County Coordination of October 15th, 2016, Countywide Residential Electronics Collection, CREC. And Ms. Monty.
Right. Immediately following the June ELUC meeting, the contractor that was in an agreement with the county and other participating local governments for the October upcoming countywide residential electronics collection opted out of his agreement. So another RFP was issued, and we received 4 qualified responses, and another recycling contractor is standing by for county approval, which will be, you'll see in subsequent items here on this agenda. So this is a request for ELUC to approve county coordination of the October 15th countywide residential electronics collection with a different contractor, essentially. And also noted in the memorandum are some different measures we're going to take this time to make it a more efficient operation, to limit participation to only Champaign County residents, and to use an online or phone-in reservation system that has proved effective when used by other counties.
Ms. Petrie.
I wonder if we could suspend the rules so that we could, and I probably should have done this when we approved the agenda, so I apologize for not stepping forward and doing that. But so we can discuss the contract as we are discussing your memo here, because I do have some questions that seem to go hand in hand, but we would have to suspend the rules to move this around in the agenda.
Point of order, I don't think you need to suspend the rules.
Yeah,
Just
I
the
mean,
chair can do what he wants. If
I
nobody
s-
complains, do it.
I see no problem with that. I mean, we'll act on it when it comes up in the agenda, but we'll discuss it in tandem, you could say now.
Okay.
That's fine by me.
Okay,
No objections.
great. Okay, yeah, can I? Yeah,
Go
I do.
ahead.
I do have some questions. I need to be reminded what were the cost-sharing amounts based on that previous contractor, and I also need to be reminded the share between Champaign County and the city of Champaign. It's very close together, yet the population of the county probably is less than that of the city of Champaign. So could you briefly tell us how you came up with your divvying up of the sharing?
Right. The model, as we discussed it back in February, indicated that Champaign County assumed the population base of all non-participating local governments in the county. So that has been remediated by an appeal that went out to all of the non-participating villages to request that they pay their fair share of approximately 17 cents per person to participate in these collections. And so far, we've received about 6 or 7 responses, and I'm about to send out another appeal to remind the village local officials that, yes, we haven't heard from you yet, and that this October would be your last opportunity to participate if you don't provide your fair share based on a population. So yes, you are correct. This is a large proportion of the population being subsidized by Champaign County during the 2016 events, but that will change in 2017 if we continue this program.
And also I asked, these amounts that we see here, are they exactly the same as they were previously?
No. There's an increase in total of $13,000, and that includes a 20% contingency, where that type of contingency was not included last time. In April, or in the May collection, we, instead of budgeting for sufficient amount of semis, we exceeded the amount of semis that was budgeted for, and ended up having to pay for 2 more semis. So instead of 8, we had 10 semis. And to avoid that kind of thing from happening, we're going to use contingencies, which probably should have been included previously. This will be a more efficient operation with the reservation system, and we're really promoting other options for everything but cathode ray television tubes and TVs.
Okay, bottom line, how much more is it costing the county?
Okay, I have that figure. Bottom line, in total, $13,000 approximately. And when we get to the cost contract, I can show you that on page, excuse me, I shouldn't be flipping. 61. All right. Previously, the county share was less than $12,100 for each collection. So previously it was closer to $9,000. So approximately $6,000 more per collection for the county.
Further discussion? Mr. Paget, yeah, since you're still here, and I know you deal with dumping and stuff on the roads.
Champaign Township Highway Crew, Keith Paget. Susan and I have had several conversations on several different topics over the years. At one time, I was doing a tire pickup, which allowed the highway commissioners of Champaign Township, tires found alongside the road that they would have to dispose of. At one time, my last pickup, I think we had 14,000 tires. At this time, we're now dealing with electronics. Susan said they had to pick up, but township wouldn't be able to participate in it. I think right now I've got 12 TVs laying there on the ground that I've picked up. When the income tax check comes, honey, let's go get a new TV. What are we gonna do with the old one? It'll be gone tomorrow. When I make the route in the morning, there's a TV or a computer screen or something like that. When you're including the governments, I'll be glad to pay, but I need to be able to get rid of those electronic items as well. Susan and I have had that conversation, so I hope you can include not only Champaign Township, but the first dark road outside of town is where all this stuff ends up. So when you're thinking about that, know that there's other places that have electronic disposal issues. Thank you.
Thank you again. Further discussion, we're talking about we're technically on 9B, John, countywide residential. And I guess I didn't get a motion on this to approve it. Moved by Mr. Harper, seconded by Ms. Berkson. So, but if there's no further discussion at this point in time, all in favor of approval of how it's presented, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Thank you, that passes. Then we'll move on then to C, request to stop work on assistance to Wilbur Heights subdivision due to inability to effect a jurisdictional transfer of Wilbur Avenue. Is there such a motion? Moved by Mr. Harper, seconded by Mr. Weibel. Ms. Monty, I believe.
So this is an update with regard to the status of the jurisdictional transfer and funds available from IDOT. And the situation at present is that no local government highway authority is eager to or has expressed an interest in maintaining Wilbur Avenue or accepting that IDOT jurisdictional transfer fund. So that's sort of a major obstacle to making further progress out at Wilbur Heights with regard to continuing and moving forward with Phase 1, which involved reconstructing Wilbur Avenue and improving the drainage ways adjacent to Wilbur Avenue. So it's not a good situation, and Wilbur Heights residents and property owners have been updated about this, and tonight we have the Township Highway Commissioner and our County Highway Engineer in case you would like to talk to them directly about this.
Sorry, Ms. Petrie.
Yeah, I do. I have a question for those who would potentially be involved or who have chosen not to be involved. And has anybody had any conversations about how to solve this by using an intergovernmental agreement between all these entities so some of this cost can be shared and we can get this moving forward, because it's just going to get worse and worse. And has anybody even broached that in any of your many conversations?
At our most current meeting a few months back, we acknowledged that the City of Champaign owns, or the jurisdiction crosses Wilbur Avenue for approximately 1/3 of the length of Wilbur Avenue. So there could be some future way of sharing responsibility for maintenance of that road between the City of Champaign and another entity, possibly, but that hasn't been discussed in particular. There would still remain the need for the remaining portion of that, 2/3 of that length of that road, about approximately a mile long.
Susan and I were expecting an intergovernmental agreement if there was someone to accept final responsibility. There is no one willing to accept final responsibility of the reconstructed Wilbur Avenue, and I know for a fact there is no jurisdiction willing to step up and say, yeah, I will maintain the rest of Wilbur Avenue into the future. I mean, there is no one willing to step up and do that.
Mr. Weibel.
Who maintains it now, except for the 1/3?
IDOT, well, IDOT has responsibility.
So they're not maintaining. Well, at least in my some people's definitions.
My most recent visit, field visit, indicated they had striped down the center lane a fresh paint of yellow line, and they've filled some potholes, but it's still in pretty poor condition, and I felt my van was going to bottom out as I drove down it. So,
Mr. Schrader?
I know we're talking about the reconstruction, but since IDOT's been taking care of it, and for I don't know how long, maybe Jeff, you want to chime in, aren't they really responsible for it then? If they've been maintaining and doing, and they're throwing asphalt in holes, and if they're pinstriping and things like that, and for how many years they've been doing that, I mean, technically, aren't they responsible then as the agency?
Yeah, technically, it's an IDOT jurisdiction road, but they've pretty much washed their hands of it to say that we're gonna do the minimum that we can to keep it open so people can drive down at it at 10 or 15 miles an hour. I mean, they're not gonna put any money into the road. The only money they have to put into the road is this jurisdictional transfer money. See, I can't explain to you how IDOT works, but they got money to give it away, but they don't have money to fix it. That's pretty much what they're telling us.
Well, you probably can't, I mean, if say, for instance, I'm just going to throw this out, it may not even possibly happen, but I mean, if you had an incident out there that was caused in some way or some effect from the poor condition of that road or something of that nature would cause property loss or damage or something, I mean, this is probably more of a legal question. I mean, couldn't you take up some type of resolution in court against IDOT?
I don't know.
Because they're the ones maintaining it, their responsibility for that road or something. I mean, then again, we're talking about the state of Illinois.
Yeah, there's a number of unmarked state routes that aren't maintained very well throughout the state. This is just one of them that happens to be in our community. So I don't know. It's when you talk about reconstructing it or trying to fix the actual surface of the roadway, you know, you can see on the old flyers that they sent out, you know, you're talking about anywhere from $200,000 to $400,000 local match. But that's just the beginning of spending money. And then you're maintaining it from here until eternity. And you guys all know who are the contractors that are out there. You got Sport Ready Mix, you got Deuce Construction, you got Stark Construction. They're all bringing heavy equipment across that road every single day. And imagine this, they're in the concrete business, so you would think maybe they might think about kicking in on trying to fix this thing. But I haven't heard them come to the table and offer any help of any kind. You got a ready mix plant right there. You got a concrete paving company right there. Got two of them actually, Deuce and Stark. And they're not here. I mean, you guys talk about the leaf burning thing and the seats are exploding with people. We talk about Wilbur Avenue, and she sent a flyer to everybody in Wilbur Avenue. I don't see anybody from Wilbur Avenue here, or even that little community, Paul Drive, or whatever roads are out there. So I don't know how concerned the people out there are about Wilbur Avenue, because they're not expressing concern that I can see.
Yeah,
And
Jeff, I can hear your frustration. I wouldn't want to take responsibility for it either if I was a municipality. Not at all. I mean, especially when, like you said, you got nobody cares, it seems like. So
Well,
why bother with the headache with it and everything else? Why
The
bother?
city has a small piece of it. You know, the township's got all the unincorporated roads out there that are being used as parking lots, basically. So, you know, the whole place is you know, just not in good shape, let's just put it that way. And I don't see a lot of people complaining about it. I maybe I'm missing it. Maybe the calls are coming in and I'm not being kept in the loop on that. But it seems like we're trying to maybe fix something that is not in the forefront of a lot of other people's minds that need to be fixed. You know, because you got people out there that can fix it. If they want to fix it, they would come and say, "Hey, we'll help you fix it." I would think, but they haven't. Maybe we need to talk to them. I don't know.
I would agree. No one's talked to him about it?
I don't know if you guys have talked at all to the local contracting companies out there about.
They've been copied on everything. Deuce did come to all of the public meetings, and Stark came to at least half, I know. So they're aware of it. I did expect that the Deuce would be here tonight, so that's a mystery to me because they have come to every meeting.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if the dollars, you know, the $634,000, if you got a local contractor out there that's gonna do the work at a lowered rate because they use the road every day and they have concrete sitting right next to the roadway that they can put back into the roadway, maybe you could work something out. I know there's the whole law about competitive bidding and all that kind of stuff, but there may be some partnership with those contractors. Since that they're in that business, I don't know. But the long-term issue is who's going to take it after it's rebuilt. It doesn't function as a county highway. All of our county highways tie small communities to an Illinois DOT road, or they tie communities to communities. You know, the city doesn't want it because they don't want to incorporate Wilbur Avenue or, you know, that whole subdivision out there. The township, I can tell you, gets $1,300 per mile of roadway to maintain all their roads in their entire township. So I don't know if you got 50 miles of roads, Rick, maybe? Yeah, so he's getting $60,000 a year for his entire township from the motor fuel tax fund. I mean, you could chew that up in a heartbeat on this roadway, doing maintenance on it in 20 years. So that's the issue. The issue is where's the funding going to come from?
And I'm sorry to take all the time. Let me expand a little bit, and let me give a little background first, because I know you guys have quite a bit of power out there. If you had to, Rick, could you put out a weight restriction sign out there and shut them down, those businesses? No, I'm serious.
That's an IDOT
But-
road.
Okay, but if you took over jurisdiction, could you do that? Because here's why I'm saying this. Because I know for a fact, especially out in Toledo Township, that when a certain agricultural retail firm out there increased the size of their operation, the former road commissioner, Rick, you know who I'm talking about, went out there and said, you're gonna pay X amount to build this, for me to build this road up of dollars to make it an 80,000 pound road, and he did. And I know for a fact, because I sat on that cooperative board where we went out there and we had to pay, I forget the exact dollar amount, but for that stretch of road that he designated to be a high truck area, he had the power to say, you will do this or I will shut your operation down. He had the power to do it. So I'm just throwing that out there. If that could be done to make those guys out there, you know, stand up and take notice that if you want this done, apparently, but we go back to, they don't seem to care because they're not here. But I'm just throwing that out there because I know it's been done before. But it's up to you, Rick, and if you don't want to take, it's your call. You're an elected official out there, so it's your call on that.
These are existing. I mean, I think the one you're talking about there are adding a facility, right, and adding more trucks. We've got existing companies out there. So to tell them now,
they were an existing company, but they expanded the business with
Right.
that big fertilizer business,
Right.
with the big fertilizer storage facility, because they're railing in material, P&K, and then the trucks increased, and then they increased the size of their chemical mixing facility. So they had those two out there, but they expanded the use.
Mr. Weibel.
Well, this is sort of thinking about a Johnny Cash song where he's from Kentucky, moves to Detroit, works at a Cadillac factory, and, you know, takes a piece of the Cadillac every year. Couldn't Stark or Deuce lay down, 2 feet of concrete every year, and eventually, in 25 years, we'd have it done.
it's just the extra concrete from the jobs that they're doing, right? Just
Exactly.
keep a hole open to pour it
Bingo.
into every day. Yeah, I know. You would think. But you know, the overarching issue out there is water as well.
Yeah, that's right. I was
Hey,
just
we
going
can
to ask
rebuild the
about
roadway
that.
all we want, but if we have a subbase that's saturated,
right.
we're throwing, good money after bad. So you really got to look at the entirety of the project.
Oh, okay, so that you got to my question already, and that is, so this road commissioner does do some leveraging, which is a very good suggested way of doing it. I was just going to cut out doing contracts with these companies. The county pays them a whole lot of money on doing work. So where is the money and how much money do we have to solve the water problem before we're clever and leverage for them to be willing to cost share. Then we do have a problem with whose jurisdiction it'll end up, but that's down the line. Let's get the other two solved first.
The jurisdiction comes first, because if you don't have someone willing to accept that jurisdictional transfer, you're not getting the $634,000, only a small part of which could help fix the drainage problem.
Right. Yeah.
Ms. Burson, that microphone, please.
Is the water out there any part of this MP4 business, our stormwater management?
Yes, it is.
Further discussion at this point in time, and thank you, Mr. Blue, and I'll just mention, maybe for those especially watching this or watching it later, Jeff Blue, County Highway Engineer, so in case they happen to wonder who he is, who you are, Jeff. Ms. Petrie.
So instead of requesting to stop this work, is it a better approach to keep the window of opportunity open and allow some more conversations and seeing what can be leveraged? Actually, Susan, what would you like to see happen? You're the one who's been working on this along with John for months and months and months.
We are at a standstill here. It wouldn't make any sense for us to do further work on it until we can get this first phase rolling, and this represents an obstacle. So until a local highway authority can be identified, I mean, that's just the way it is that I see.
Anything else? We're ready to vote. Looks like we're ready to vote. All in favor of discontinuing?
Is
Oh,
there a
Mr.
motion?
Rebel.
Is there a motion?
Yeah, we took a
Okay.
motion. Yeah, to accept this, the request. All in favor? Aye. All opposed, nay? Thank you, that did pass, but with one nay. Okay, we're getting out of those. We're moving on to the next section. Do we want to take a quick break? This is a longer than normal ELEC meeting for good reason, good discussion. What's the consensus? Keep going or move on? Okay, just thought I'd ask. We're at 10 items to be recommended to the county board, and thank you, Jeff, real quick, thanks. We have A, zoning case 833-AM-16, request by Terry and Janice Wolf, doing business as Wolf Ag Solutions Incorporated, to amend the zoning map to change the zoning district designation from the AG2 Agriculture District to the B4 General Business District for the continued use of a farm equipment sales and service business with a trailer sales area, open lot, for Wolf Ag Solutions located at 2758 County Road 1100 North, County Highway 15, Homer. Is there such a motion? Moved by Mr. Harper, seconded by Ms. Berkson. Discussion? Mr. Weibel?
No word from the Village of Homer? Okay.
Did you have something, Ms. Petrie?
It always concerns me, it's always sort of after the fact. John knows I'll say it, it's on the public record. This is bothering me.
True. I don't know how if we're supposed to go shut them down and then make them start back up, though. Exactly. This isn't just, they didn't just start up 2 months ago and now they're coming asking for approval. Any other discussions? Seeing none. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. That passes unanimously. Move on then to B, where we have the intergovernmental cost share agreement for the 2016 countywide residential electronics collection, which we've already somewhat discussed. First of all, get a motion. Is there a motion moved by Ms. Petrie, seconded by Mr. Heiser? Susan, did you have anything else to add before we?
Well, I'll add
from
that
your-
I have no additional revisions to suggest to the agreement based on feedback received from the state's attorney's office.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Thank you. That passed unanimously. And still related, we will go to the agreement, C, the agreement between the contractor, the coordinator, and the host site for the 2016 countywide residential electronics collection. Is there such a motion? Moved by Ms. Petrie, seconded by Mr. Heiser. Further discussion on this, or Susan, if you have anything?
Same comment about no additional revisions. It's been reviewed by the new contractor and the state's attorney's office attorney. And the local team of recycling coordinators of participating agencies is awaiting approval this August so that the new measures can be promoted as soon as possible. Thanks.
Discussion after that? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Thank you, that passed unanimously. Move on to D, amending the RPC fiscal year 2016 county planning contract to reallocate work hours from LRMP implementation to MS4 storm sewer system map preparation as referenced earlier by Mr. Hall. Is there such a motion? Moved by Mr. Schrader, seconded by Mr. Weibel. Further discussion, or continue discussion, extra discussion on this? Oh. Go ahead.
Is this for if we don't give them the extra person, or is this if we do?
Either way, we need to do this either way.
Either way.
This is for this year, the rest of this year, whereas the staff would be for next year's budget. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. That passes unanimously. Move on then to E, the fiscal year 2017 county planning contract proposal. Do we have a motion to approve this? Oh, this is E. Oh, sorry. No, the planning contract proposal. Moved by Mr. Weibel, seconded by Mr. Schrader. Discussion on this. Did you have, Susan, did you have? Oh, microphone isn't on. Blink back off. Blink back off for some reason.
Susan, put your microphone.
There it's on. Thank you.
Okay, so this memorandum is returning to you after being reviewed since since June. We received input from John Hall as he described. MS4 program has, there's a need to accommodate that set of requirements, and that need is accommodated with the revisions in proposal attachment A. And if that option is selected, then items displaced from the fiscal year 2017 proposal would have been the comprehensive update of the Champaign County Solid Waste Management Plan and initial development of a Champaign County Natural Resource Assessment System. So those items would be put off, and that would be part of option A. Alternative proposal attachment B, also with input received since June from John Hall, to continue on with the efforts for the environmental justice work that is going to start this fall, and to have that completed by March 1st. That is a revision to revise and make more specific that part of the described LRMP priority item. So it's a more specific description, and then to reallocate some additional hours to, whoops, I guess I lost my place, I'm sorry. There were two changes to the alternative attachment B to allow for the environmental justice work, and I can't remember what the other one was. Rita, my notes are all screwed up here. Excuse me, here it is. Okay, so attachment B is the proposal. In the event that the Department of Planning and Zoning does receive the additional staff person, this would retain the two items that were removed in attachment A, assuming that the MS4 work would displace the fiscal year 2017 items, including the Champaign County Solid Waste Management Plan update and the Natural Resource Assessment System. So if you have any questions, I would be pleased to take them. That was sort of a disjointed presentation of this revised 2017 proposal. If you adopt it today, or make a recommendation for its adoption today, then it would be in place, and depending on what the budget outcomes are for this fiscal year, considerations of the fiscal year for 2017, then we would know which of the options to use. So in the event that the Department of Planning and Zoning gets its funding, we would go with attachment B option. And if the Department of Planning and Zoning is refused or denied its extra staff person, we would go with attachment A work plan.
Discussion on this. Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Did pass, but not unanimously. Thank you. We will then move on to F, the proposed decommissioning of Mabel Thomas Park located at 2603 Campbell Drive, Champaign. Is there such a motion? Moved by Ms. Petrie, seconded by Ms. Berkson. Discussion on this, Ms. Petrie?
I just wanted to make a comment so it's on the public record. I understand why this needs to happen due to what's going on in that area, but I am sad to see this happening because Mabel Thomas, who worked in neighborhood services in the city of Champaign, was actually the most helpful individual and the impetus for many neighborhood services and working with neighborhoods. And then in particular, I do want to underline, she really was the starting point for everything we accomplished in the John Street watershed. And without her beginning support when we started out as nascent people learning about stormwater management to the end product of all that work that was done in conjunction with John Street watershed and mitigating the terrible flooding that occurred there and used to be called Lake Neal and Lake John. I like putting this on the public record as a tip of the hat to Mabel. Thank you.
Thank you, Patsy. Further discussion, Mr. Weibel?
John or Jamie, have you looked at the property?
Yeah.
Oh, you have pictures.
Yeah, I've seen the property too.
Is the playground equipment still being used?
No, it's protected.
Microphone?
It's a liability system.
If you would, please, Jamie. Thank you.
We got a guy from the Champaign Neighborhood Services came to our office and said that they had been cleaning up the property and they were tired of cleaning it up. And there were problems with people gathering there in large groups and maybe drug deals. They didn't know. So they said, what is the county going to do about it? You own the lot. So John looked at our budget and we had a temporary construction fence put up, 6-foot construction fence to keep people out when we realized the county was going to be liable if somebody went in there and got hurt on this playground equipment. The guy at Neighborhood Services says that the equipment is past its useful life. In the pictures, it doesn't look bad to me, but I didn't get on the stuff, so I don't know. So that's where we're at right now. We've got this temporary construction fence up, and the county needs to decide what they're going to do with it.
No,
The
sorry.
county owns it, but it's in the city of Champaign.
So do we own the equipment per se, or is that, or will we end up, I mean?
Well,
since-
technically, we do own it. When the state's attorney put the eviction notice on there, it was remove your stuff with it, and they didn't remove anything, so I guess it's ours.
Well, I wish you would clarify that, I guess.
Well, to clarify that, there's only 2 people left on this Dobbins
Well,
Dale
yeah, but, I think that we can't just
with
assume
the
it's
state's
ours.
attorney. Right,
I mean, if the state's attorney says, go ahead and take it, that's different. but-
right, and I think on the
I'd
5-day
like to
notice
see
it
that.
said that, but
Okay.
I can double check.
The other thing is that some of the other, you might check with the park districts and maybe the schools, there may be parts of this equipment they may want to use. Like I noticed that retaining wall, south side has problems with erosion, primarily from the playground around school. Comes down into the grass, it comes down actually into one of the play areas and washes the wood chips further downhill. So a place like that you may want to use some of that boarding, or some of the other entities may find something useful. So if you could find a home for some of it.
We've
that'd be-
checked, actually, with the park districts, they're not interested. Rick Snyder has found a website where we could advertise these items for sale, but everything except that plastic retaining wall, everything else is anchored in concrete,
Well,
so.
I agree, that's a problem, but the bordering wall you might find a home for that somewhere.
But for right now, the need is just to know what the county board wants to do. So once they tell us, yes, prepare a plan for decommissioning, then we know which way to go.
Ms. Petrie, did you have something, or your question's been answered?
I thought the last time that we discussed this, that their home had been found for it, but I see that isn't panning out very well. So thanks for those previous efforts.
Sure.
Did you have something else, Pius?
Suggest that John put some of it in his backyard. Those grandchildren you'll get someday.
There you go. Okay, seeing no further discussion, I don't believe. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Okay, thank you. That passed unanimously. Ms. Petrie?
I would like to have item 10A not on the consent agenda.
Okay, we can do that. We'll go to monthly reports for the May and June 2016. Are there any questions, comments on those? Seeing none. Oh, John, go ahead.
I just wanted to give the committee an update. I've talked a lot about how zoning cases have virtually exploded this year, and since June, we've had only one additional case. So hopefully that growth has stopped. At this point, we still have more zoning cases than last year, and there's 4 months to go yet. So it's still going to be a big year, but it is slacking off.
Okay, thank you. We will receive and place those on file. Any other business? I have no chair's report. The designation of items to be placed on consent agenda. Under 10, we have B, C, D, and F. And with that, is there a motion to adjourn? Moved by Ms. Bergson, seconded by Mr. Heiser. We're adjourned. Thank you all.